Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock. This is City of Heroes. We are with Liberty Lass, our level 36 brute, who's got about a half a million XP to go. Roughly half a level to go to get to level 37. We just got Master Architect and Architect as our badges, and that is from spending offline logout time in the Mission Architect. Haven't actually done the Mission Architect missions. I should do that at some point, I guess. But right now we are on a story arc for Colleen Nelson, The Path of the Dark and or Path into Darkness it's called now. Did they change? Somebody comment, post in the comments if you know. Did they change on Homecoming the names um, of some of these story arcs? Because I thought this was the Path of the Dark, and I thought that the Library of Souls was the Library of Lost Souls. Did they change them for some reason, or am I just remembering them wrong? I guess I could go look at Silver Phoenix, but if you know, answer in the comments. We're going to go to Steel Canyon now, if I can remember where the train station is. There it is. And so we're going to head over to Steel Canyon. By the way, let's take a look at our influence right now. We have 17.5 million influence. It's not a lot, but it's certainly enough to buy all of the enhancements we're going to need when we get to level 37. Um, because we've got a bunch of invention enhancements, including a set. So those won't need to be upgraded. Only the stuff that's the level 35 SOs will need to be upgraded. Now again, you can buy the inventions, but I'm only going with the ones that we have collected through drops. So right now we have recharge reductions, we have uh, endurance reduction, and damage resistance. So those we can go ahead and craft when the time comes. We could craft some of them right now. The level 40s we can't actually use. Um, the level 35s we could, so we could craft them right now and slot them in and just rip out the SOs. But I tend to just wait on that. The SOs are fine. Um, they're a little yellow to us right now if we look, right? They're a little yellow to us, but that's okay. We've gotten a lot fewer drops than we did before. I felt like we got so many generic damage and generic accuracy, and we're not getting them at all now. I wonder why that is. Ah, we're fighting some werewolves now. Well, one thing I need to do is remove this. This is debt protection, self-res. Let's put that up there. I don't think we're going to need that because we don't generally die in missions, but in fact, I'll be pretty ashamed if we die in this mission since it's only +2. And I think when we hit level 37, maybe 38, I don't know. I think we really need to move this up to +2. Even the +2s are just barely making it in terms of sufficient difficulty. I'm just concerned about the constant frustration I'm going to have from miss streaks that we're going to get against +3s. But it may be worth it. I think when we hit level 37 and we get our enhancements slotted up, I think we are in fact going to move up to +3 and see, or +2 missions and see how we handle it. I think we should be fine. At level 37, it should be no problem. I mean, you can see that we're fighting +1s here and just crushing them. So, and +2s are no issue at all. Um, So you may be wondering, when do we get the last row of inspirations? That inspiration tray, right? The tray gets one more row. That happens at level 40. It used to be, when the game first went live, it used to be that that was the end, right? You'd get to level 40, that was the end. Other than Hamadan raids, there wasn't anything else to do, and then you got your inspirations. And people early on complained about the fact that there was really no need for them once you got to level 40, because unless you were doing hammy raids, there was nothing to do but street hunt. However, once they put the level 40 to 50 content in, well, now you use it for 10 levels, right? So then it made sense. I can't remember. If somebody remembers, put it in the comments. I believe that hang on, let me just check the sound here. Okay, it looks all right. I believe that the they announced. Let's just gather these guys up. I believe they announced that they were going to do a patch to level 50 before or right at launch. So everybody knew that we were going to get a level cap increase right from the beginning, right? So I think people realized that getting the last set of inspiration tray slots at level 40 wasn't going to be a complete waste once you leveled up, but once they patched the game. But there were a lot of people who complained that it was sort of a moot point if you before they released the first update. But it only took them like 3 months to put the first update out. And I'm pretty sure, somebody check me on that, but I'm pretty sure the very first update was the update to the level 50 cap. And they had to get that out because people had already hit level 40, and they knew that if people were on level 40 and they couldn't do anything but Hamadan raids for so long, they would just stop subscribing to the game. All right, and then the fear isn't just that the subscriptions have ended, which is bad enough, and that, oh well, they'll resubscribe when we put out new content. But the concern for a developer team of an MMO is always, after they unsubscribe, will they find another MMO and start playing that and decide they like it better and not come back? They don't want you trying another MMO out because you might like it better, or it might just simply be being developed more actively, and you might say, I'm going with that one because it's being actively developed, or it's not as buggy, or it's got more content, or whatever. And so for game developers, especially MMO developers, they don't actually want you to leave their MMO even for a little while because they're afraid they're not going to get you back. So I'm pretty sure that the first thing they did was the level 40 to 50 content. And then, of course, people complained that that wasn't enough. And eventually they had to put in the Keldian content, and so on. And that is the mission. That was quick. So we found travel reports about where the council is going. At some point... Is this where you fight the Envoy of Shadows? That's a different story arc, right? I can't remember. Alright, so now we're going to Marisol, who is in Brickstown. Go this way. I really like Steel Canyon. It does feel like a Steel Canyon, right? It's a place of skyscrapers. I've never been able to tell. Is this only commercial offices, or are there... I think there are residences here, right? Because if you look at... like, these buildings over here are clearly apartment buildings. I don't think they're office buildings. So the ones on the sides are apartment buildings, it looks like. But all the big tall ones, are they only office, or are some of them residential? So if you could live in any zone in City of Heroes, in any part of Paragon City, which part would you pick? I love Founders Falls, but I think I'd probably pick Talos Island. I just think it's so pretty, and I like the sea. I'm a marine biologist, so of course. And it's got a nice beach and everything, and it's just, I really like the aesthetic of Talos Island a lot. Founders Falls would probably be my second choice. So where would you live? Atlas Park, maybe? I mean, I had a lot of one friend who said, well, I live in Atlas Park because I would die if I was trying to, like, at least they're only level 1 to 6 villains, right? You go to Talos Island and there's like level 22 Sue and Freak Show and stuff, and they're, if you're a normal person, they're just going to one-shot you. At least you got a chance to run away from the Hellions. But yeah, in terms of the aesthetic, I think I'd probably go um, for Talos. Although the new zone that they never really finished, but is live um, on Homecoming, is Callisti Wharf, and that's actually very pretty too. And I don't think there are any villains in Callisti Wharf. There weren't the last time I went there. I'm not sure if the Homecoming guys have the ability to actually add villains and stuff to that zone. They may not want to, right? They may want to leave it as a legacy of the unfinished work that the devs did before the game was taken down. I just don't know what those. Well, I don't know what the plans are for that. I could have sworn at one point they were talking about developing content for it. So this is a +2 boss. You can see we're not really having any trouble with him. And at 37, total focus will hit a lot more because we will put an accuracy on it. Man, I am missing this guy a lot. At, what, 80, 90% to hit? So, let me ask another question of the comments. Feel free to post what your preferences are. No judging here, right? We just, this is just what we like. The City of Heroes is a superhero game. What other superhero media content, if any, do you guys consume? Do you folks watch any either current or maybe old school, reruns of superhero TV shows? I remember talking way back when the pandemic was going that I had actually bought on Vudu, which is now Fandango. I really should just buy DVDs of stuff, but I had bought Wonder Woman, like the Linda Carter Wonder Woman, and I had really enjoyed watching that. And I used to watch it at lunchtime, right? I would do my work from home. I actually started really early because I usually can't sleep in the morning. By 6:30, 7 o'clock, I'm awake. So I just get up and start my day, and it's work from home, so I would just start doing stuff. And by, noon, I'm already ready for a bit of a break, and I would stop and have lunch. And while I was making lunch and eating lunch, I would watch an episode of Wonder Woman. And I greatly enjoyed the first season. The later seasons, I feel like 2 and 3 aren't as good. But yeah, so there's that. I mean, there's lots of old superhero cartoons like The Amazing Spider-Man. There are more current superhero TV shows put out by, Marvel and DC, Warner Brothers, and Disney, basically. There, of course, are the superhero movies. We don't need to name all of those. There are too many to name, and there are lots of them, many of them very successful. There are comic books, of course, which this medium is based upon. There are superhero games, Champions, Everyday Heroes. I have a friend who's playing that one and having a lot of fun with it. There's, what is it, Ascendant or something? Masks, right? And Steve Jackson Games has GURPS, right? Which the GURPS Supers, and various other superhero like tabletop games. So what other kind of superhero media do you guys consume, if any? What are your favorites? So in terms of the movies, I didn't like. Let's see. In terms of the movies, I think probably my all-time favorite, greatest superhero movie ever is probably the original Christopher Reeve Superman. I feel like it had a good story. It had great acting. It had a Superman that was so perfect. Christopher Reeve was amazing as both Superman and Clark Kent. It had the John Williams music, and it just was the first time that they ever did believable special effects for superheroes, right? I mean, there had been some TV shows before. There was a Spider-Man show. I think. There were a few others, and they were okay. the Superman TV show, right? Adventures of Superman, the Batman TV show, they were okay, you know, but in terms of the believability of the superpowers and stuff, Superman, the movie with Christopher Reeve, is just about the best there was. That's one of my all-time favorites. I also liked, within the Marvel movies, I liked the Captain America trilogy. I thought those were pretty good. Um, they weren't perfect, but they were pretty good. I liked the first Iron Man movie, but not the others. Let's see, what else did I like in that group? I liked Black Panther. That was pretty good. The original, I didn't see the second one. Because I'd stopped watching Marvel movies by then. The last Marvel movie I watched, or anything I watched, was Infinity War, whatever the final Avengers movie was. Haven't watched any of that stuff since. TV shows, as I said, I liked the first season of the... and so many of the superhero shows, and this part I don't get. They're excellent in season 1, and then they change the formula in seasons 2 and later, and they're just not as good. So... Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. Season 1's great. Season 2 and 3 and 4 are terrible. So I bought the DVDs of Season 1, but as far as I'm concerned, that's all there is. I don't watch anymore. Supergirl, the TV show. Again, excellent in Season 1. Terrible in Season 2. And just increasingly dreadful as the seasons went on. I think, right? I found... I've tried to watch... I have the DVDs of every season because it's Supergirl and I just collect Supergirl stuff. Even if I don't like it because I'm an idiot. And because that's how some of us collectors are. And I have tried several times to watch the 4th season. And I can't get past the first couple episodes. They're just so awful. And I'm like, why am I going to put myself through hours and hours and hours of this kind of dreck? And I'd heard that the 4th season was better, but I didn't like what they were doing with the show. I just felt like they abandoned the best parts of the show, and they just totally ignored. And there was just no attempt at all, zero attempt to have any sort of respect for continuity between episodes, let alone seasons, or even sometimes within an episode. So many times stuff happens in these shows that's just there. It just happened because the writers and actors wanted it to, not because it makes any friggin' sense at all. And I don't really like that when shows do that. But I love the first season of it, and I've rewatched the first season like 8 times. And just been very depressed and unhappy that I can't really go on past there. I do sometimes watch the first couple episodes of season 2 because Superman's in it, and I thought they did an okay job with that. But as that season progressed, it got increasingly dumb. And then season 3 was just a disaster. The Reign storyline was just horrible. Unfortunately, I feel like with that show, the number one problem with that show was that the showrunners, the producers and writers and stuff, they could not figure out when enough was enough. My father used to have a saying, I can't remember what the saying was in Italian, but it translated to, enough is sufficient, too much is an abundance. And he used to say that, the Italian version of that. Or a lot of times he would shortcut it and just say, enough is sufficient already, when we were acting up or when we were doing something that was driving him crazy. And what he meant by that was, okay, you've done enough. More than that is too much. And I feel like, especially with the Supergirl TV show, the showrunners could not ever figure out when they had done enough. And they just beat the Reign story into the ground. It's just so repetitive and bad. And it was clear that they had no plan for how to finish it because the last couple of episodes were just completely nonsense. Like, they just didn't make any sense at all. They were totally illogical. Nothing made any sense. And the whole last episode, the climax happened like 15 minutes into the episode, and then it was like they didn't know what to do. It was just terrible. I've honestly never seen anything that bad in superhero television, and that's saying something. But I like the first season, and I do rewatch that quite often. Um, every so often, right? What other stuff? I did like within the DC movies. The only thing I liked was the first Wonder Woman. I was intensely disappointed by the second one because it was just so bad all the way around, and it bothered me because there were so many of the same people on the show, same directors, same main characters, same main stars, and the premise was terrible, and the execution was worse. I mean, that's the problem. You can have a bad premise, and if you execute it brilliantly, it might actually be okay, but the execution was bad. And that surprised me because usually a good director can get good execution at least, no matter how bad the story is, but not in that case. Okay, where is this thing? The file. Click. There it is. Down here somewhere. Oh, here. What other TV shows have I watched? Lois and Clark, I liked a lot. I watched the old, what's his name? John Wesley ship Flash. I felt like parts of that first season, it was only one season, right? Parts of that were pretty good. A lot of times with these shows, they make inexplicable cast changes like mid-season, and you're like, I don't know why you did that. Gathering as many allies as we can. Path of the Dark, the Seed of the Dark. Yeah, we don't need allies. We're good. Yeah, they have a good cast, and then they seem to get this out of here. They have a good cast, and then they seem to, I don't know if the actors don't want to continue or the showrunners don't want to pay the actors, and they'll change the cast, and all that's left is like the star and maybe the second most important character, and everybody else changes. Or sometimes only the star is left. I mean, they did this in Wonder Woman. Part of the problem with that was they changed networks. Did that happen also to The Flash? I think it might have. Didn't it start on CBS and then it switched? And when they switched, they didn't have the same cast. Maybe that's what happened to it. I liked the show. The first few episodes, I actually really liked it. And then, I don't know, something happened where it went off the rails. Okay, we're going to go back into the train and go south. Telcel in 2027 server maintenance. Interesting. Why are they doing server maintenance on a single instance? That's weird. I've literally never seen that in City of Heroes. I'm on the Discord, but I haven't actually looked at the Discord to see what's going on. Comic books, I don't read superhero comic books anymore because they're terrible universally. But the old ones, man, I used to love, years ago, Walt Simonson's Thor was my all-time favorite. I loved Bill Matlow's ROM Space Knight, even though he's not a superhero. He kind of was, and it was really cool. I liked the original X-Men a lot from the 60s. I liked Roger Stern did a really good run on the Avengers that ended up with them fighting like Pluto or something, and that was really good. I can still remember that. That was really good. It had good art and everything in it too. I very much liked Mark Grunwald's run in Captain America. My favorite storyline of that was probably the storyline where he gave up the shield because he was told to do something he didn't believe in, which was to basically enforce the Mutant Registration Act, and that was done against the rights of the mutants, and Captain America said, I refuse to do it, and they said, you have to. You're an agent of the government, you're a government employee. You must do it, and he said, I refuse, and they said, well, then you can't be Captain America anymore. We fire you. And there's a great scene where he just left. He was in the court talking to the judge, and the judge said they have the right to take your shield and your rank and everything away, and so he left the shield behind and walked away. And there's just the way the quote-unquote camera was angled, right? It was like you saw Captain America over here, and then let's see, let's say this is the bench of the judge, and it was kind of like down here at this angle, and you had the shield here and Captain America walking away in the background. Man, that gave me chills when I first read it. And then it was like a year and a half, a storyline where Captain America, Steve Rogers, was now just simply called the Captain, and he had a black uniform, black, red, and white instead of red, white, and blue. And because they were friends, Black Panther got the vibranium from Wakanda and gave him a similar shield. The actual comic book Captain America, the shield is not vibranium. It's a vibranium adamantium alloy, which makes it both unbreakable and vibration proof. In the movies, they've combined the characteristics of that into a single thing that they call vibranium. But in the comics, the vibranium shield was vibration proof, but it wasn't as unbreakable as the adamantium shield was. And so the adamantium vibranium shield, and the name of Captain America and the uniform went to a guy who had been called U.S. Agent, whose real name was John Walker, and John Walker ended up being like a sociopath or whatever, and he used wildly excessive force against villains, right? He didn't like beat up innocent people, but he used very excessive force against villains. He had a partner named Battlestar who kept trying to rein him in, but wasn't always successful at it. And he way overdid the force, and eventually he kind of lost it. Why didn't these guys aggro? He kind of lost it, and Steve Rogers had to basically take him down. In the meantime, Steve Rogers couldn't work with heroes because he was basically a criminal. So he started working with a criminal named Diamondback, a female, and she fell in love with him. And so she was trying to get Captain America to respect her. So she kind of gave up her criminal ways, and she helped him a lot. She risked her life for him several times. And it wasn't the sort of thing that she normally would do, but she was trying to get Captain America to respect her, right? Steve Rogers, the Captain. And so it's a really cool storyline, and behind it all, ultimately manipulating everything, was the Red Skull, which of course is what happens in a Captain America story. And the Red Skull had Arnim Zola reincarnate him somehow, and he had himself. And by the way, the reason they're saying they think you need multiple help here, multiple partners, is because of all the bosses. But yeah, we're a brute, we don't need that. So anyway, the Skull had gotten himself basically reincarnated in the body, identical to Steve Rogers, like a clone. And so at the end, Steve Rogers had to fight himself, which was kind of cool, like his own physical self with the skull inside of, in his mind. It was very cool, great storyline. And of course, at the end of it, he got his Captain America uniform back, because once the Skull had stopped manipulating things, the government kind of let Steve Rogers back into the Captain America costume. So it's a really cool story. One of my favorite storylines in all of comics, and made Mark Gruenwald one of my favorite writers in comics. And then in DC Comics, I really loved Hawk and Dove, the 1989 version post-Crisis, with written by Carl Kessel and Barbara Kessel, their husband-wife team. And I think she wrote Dove and he wrote Hawk, and then I don't know who wrote the various NPCs. I think Barbara, because Carl was more of an artist, but they worked on the comic together, and it was a lot of fun. It's one of my favorites of all time. I also loved the Legion of Superheroes when it was Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, and then segued into just being called the Legion in the mid to late 200s, even the early 200s. I used to have some in the 220s, 230s that I really liked. But I especially love the Great Darkness Saga. That was written by Paul Levitz. He was a great writer, and all of the stuff that he did in the mid to late 200s, early 300s of the Legion of Superheroes was just beautiful. Really great. So yeah, I have lots of comic books that I loved that were my favorite storylines. So if you read comics, what were your favorite series? What were your favorite story arcs? Which ones did you like the most? Um, I never read it, but Peter David's Hulk was supposed to be amazing. Peter David and Gary Frank. They, by the way, teamed up for the Matrix Supergirl series, and even though I don't really like the Matrix Supergirl as a character conceptually, man, what a great series. That's another amazing series. It's not really Supergirl because it's not Kara Zor-El, but it they did a great job with it, and Gary Frank's art is incredible. And then when he left, they got another artist named Leonard Kirk, who also did an excellent job. And yeah, that was a good series for. Well, the whole thing was really good, but the first, I want to say, 50 issues were pretty outstanding. One thing you're noticing now is our health is starting to take a bit of a beating because we're facing these +3 bosses. This is why I've had a little bit of a hesitation on going. Was it +3 or are they +2 bosses? I'm going up to +2 just because of the +3 stuff. So we need to defeat Rocco and recover the Seed of Darkness. These guys aren't Rocco. You know what's interesting? I don't believe there are... I actually thought about this at one point when I was a kid. Would it be interesting to, say, write a novel that's superheroes? Have people done that? I'm not sure that I recall ever seeing a superhero novel. You know, like Lord of the Rings, but instead of that, superheroes. I guess they probably did novelizations of the Marvel movies, but that's not what I mean. I mean like an original concept of superheroes, but done instead of as a visual thing, as pure text. I mean, in the old days, superheroes were only done in comics, and I thought it probably wouldn't work. But now that superheroes have bled into other media, like games and movies and television, I wonder if... Yeah, he's a +1 boss, so the purples were +2. I thought they were +3. I wonder if... I wonder if it would be of interest to people now for a superhero novel. I mean, I feel like, in a very realistic sort of a sense, the Mistborn trilogy is kind of about superheroes, because the Mistborn characters can essentially super jump through the town, and they have extra strength and extra resistance and super reflexes. So they're kind of like scrappers almost. And they also can blast, you know, iron and steel and metal at you, the Allomancy. So I don't know, that's kind of like superheroes, and if that works, I could see it working in the modern world, and therefore you could have superheroes. I don't know. But guys with spandex and costumes and secret identities and stuff, not just powers, but the whole superhero motif. Would that work as a novel? Has anybody done it? If anybody has, put the name of the book in the comments and I'll look into it. Not going to promise I'm going to read it anytime soon because I've got a massive, 100 or so book stack of, not an actual physical stack, but to read list in. Well, I don't use Goodreads anymore, but in what do I use? Storygraph. But yeah, I would like to see how that was executed if someone has done it. Not that I'm going to execute it myself, but I'd kind of like to see it. It's sort of the only medium I don't recollect having seen a lot of content with superheroes. Alright, let's take a look at the clue. The Shadow Seed was delivered after his defeat. Archon Bacco told you, "You're too late, fool. We knew you were onto us. So we sent the seed to ground." Okay. Well, we'll go to Independence Port. So there's 2 instances of IP. I guess because Talos Island is partially locked, people are coming here instead. Not sure what's going on with that. If anybody knows, feel free to post it in the comments. So let's see. Let's go to the base. and then we will call our contact. And I think that's probably enough for tonight, guys. We missed it? How could that be? Well, they knew we were coming. All right. I think we've done a pretty good chunk. About 35 minutes in. I think it's enough for tonight. I don't want to get us into a really, really long episode. We'll continue in the next episode with the Path of the Dark. Until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes.